People Welcome to Rev Shots, your weekly dose of quick hit wisdom, where we tackle the most pressing topics of the day for ourselves and our revenue teams. Our show features expert guests with decades of experience. We delve into what works and why, sharing tools to be unapologetically successful, from making our number to delighting our clients. If you're ready to boost your knowledge in under 30 minutes on a weekly basis, tune in. Follow me on LinkedIn or join our mailing list to stay updated on our latest features. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Rev Shots today, your quick hits of wisdom. It's like eavesdropping into conversations that are happening all around the country and probably ones you're interested in. So thank you for joining us for a special edition today. Haley, I'm so excited to talk with you today. Thank you for joining today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Mike Rizzo, our mutual friend, introduced us at his event, Mopsapalooza, last year. Believe it or not, it feels like it was just yesterday, not 4 months ago. And here we are. So he's amazing. And tell us about you, please.
Yeah, I co-founded Code, which is a boutique leadership development firm about, 3.5+ years ago now. And I spent 5 years before that working in learning and development internally. So I've spent quite a bit of time really focused on how do you develop people, what tools are the most impactful, and really like what is the methodology to make things actually stick and help people build skills for a lifetime. And so that's the work that I'm in. And I work with a lot of high growth organizations all over the place, industry agnostic, to really set them up for success and set their people up for success as they continue to grow.
Yeah, I love that. So why people? Why leadership? Why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because I love giving people the skills to be able to excel at the thing that's important to them, right? We all show up to work, we have a mission. And for the most part, when we talk about moving into leadership, there is a completely different skill set that we need to have in order to get everybody else on board with what our vision is, what our mission is. And I typically work with middle management. So these are people who are high performers, they're ambitious, they're growth oriented, they're problem solvers. So they have all of the natural skill sets to excel, and then they move into management. And now all of a sudden, there's a completely different set of roles and responsibilities, right? You need to be able to motivate other people who probably aren't wired the same way as you. Instead of just coming into work and taking care of your business, you're in the middle of a lot of conflict and interpersonal dynamics. You have to be able to not only receive feedback now, but also give it. There's all of these skills, right? And for the most part, the people that I work with, they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to be really successful. It's just about giving them a path forward that's going to shrink that learning curve. So instead of having to learn through trial and error over years and years and years, we can cut that down and create a space where we're really intentionally developing our leadership skills and growing our team at the same time.
I love that, Haley. I love everything you just said. It was such a great overview. And I want to kind of focus in on a few things. There is the middle management layer and moving from a high performer to this leadership role. And you're going, not everybody is like me. So sometimes there's those really big aha moments like, wow, I have to learn what motivates other people and figure out how to like bring out the best in other people. We're not responsible for other people, but as a leader, we kind of have to create that environment that people bring the best version of themselves. And that's a totally different switch. It's a pull instead of a push.
100%. Like instead of knowing all the things that I'm great at, it's like you have to see the greatness in other people and know how to turn it on and how to fill in the gaps. And and also like from a coaching and leadership perspective, if someone's showing up in a way that's not the most productive, or you can see they're not having, it's having a negative impact on the people around them or the team dynamic, how do you engage in that conversation, right? So it's all these things that are brand new problems, right? That most new managers have never experienced before. And And the interesting thing about middle management too is the impact of having a layer of management that is not effective is really profound in an organization. Obviously, from an execution perspective, if your middle management isn't able to take the vision of the leadership and make sure it gets communicated and distilled down to their people, the growth of the organization is going to be stunted. But it also is where a lot of friction can reside, right? If you have people up and down the chain of command that aren't able to communicate or aren't on the same page as middle management, there is going to be a ripple effect that tends to, it doesn't stop at one person. And again, for the most part, people show up to work, they're trying to do the best they can. So it's just, how do we give them the skills so that they can communicate with everybody, they can work really effectively with everybody, and their teams can accomplish everything that they want to accomplish, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Haley. And so I would add something here, but I'm going to pause a second. And I want to ask the question then, with all of the cohorts that you are working in and the people you're seeing, in this middle management layer, the question I have for all of our guests and you, and I think this is going to be a two-pronged question, is what are you hearing most, like the most talked about topic within your cohort? But then also, like, what are they bringing to the table? But then also, like, what else are you hearing out in the world when you're talking with colleagues? So kind of main topic within your cohort, and then main topic when you're talking with folks out in general as well.
Yeah, it's a great question. With all of I call them team practices. With all of our team practices, the very first thing on the agenda is, what feedback do we have for people? And also, what business tensions are you experiencing that you need help with, right? So every day I'm listening to all the different business tensions that managers are bringing, and they're saying, I don't know how to deal with this situation. Give me some perspective. I need some coaching.
Yeah.
I would say the vast majority of them center around communication, for sure. It's either I have an idea and I don't know how to translate it in a way that the person on the receiving end is going to be able to receive it, or they're going to be enthusiastic about it, or I have tension with a colleague and I don't know how to script the feedback or address it. I'm sitting in the middle of a conflict and we're on different ends. It seems like we're on different ends of the spectrum, and I don't know how to get us to a resolution and to move forward. And so much of that has to do with how we're framing conversations, how we're showing up in conversations, and how are we able to really get to the heart of what's important to us and what's important to the other person tends to be the crux of the majority, I would say, of the tensions that people bring to our live sessions.
Yeah, that is so fascinating. And so add to this a little bit too, right? One of the things I had recently read was, a lot of times we are trying to communicate for the sake of communication. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Not necessarily trying to communicate for comprehension.
Yes. I always tell people, whenever we're having these conversations, I always say, okay, what's the thing that you value the most in this situation, right? Whenever there's a tension or something that we're excited about, it works for positive feedback too. There's a value of ours. It's either being met or it's not being met. And if we can drill down and be able to articulate, I don't want to have this conversation because I don't want to shame and blame you. I want to have this conversation because I really value timeliness or efficiency or transparency or teamwork. What is that core value that is really at the root of where your discomfort, typically if it's, it's constructive, is coming from? And can we articulate that so that the other person understands that that's why I want to have this conversation? That's what is actually important to me. It's not about making you the bad guy. And also getting them to think about, if you put yourself in that other person's shoes, what do you think is most important to them? Because they're most likely not trying to do something just to undermine you.
9 times out of 10, no. Yeah.
There's a value of theirs that's really important. And what I've tended to find is, for the most part, our values aren't so misaligned to the point where we can't even see where the other person is coming from. But if we just focus on the last thing that they told us or the solution that they brought to the table, and we focus on all the reasons why we don't like that, and we don't actually get to the heart of how did they get there, what's important to them, our ability to find a middle ground and figure out next steps becomes a lot more difficult. So that tends to be where we start when we're navigating those types of situations.
Yeah, I think that's amazing too. And what else I'm hearing you say, Haley, is it's the self-awareness that we, one, need to have, and two, we've actually identified what's important to us. So
I always tell people, I'm like, feedback is just as much about you as it is about the other person. We can all be in the same room and something might rub me the wrong way and you might not even notice it, right? Because I have different tensions and values and experiences that I've been through that make me tune into things. And that's on me. That's subjective, which doesn't mean that it's not important. It absolutely is important, but also recognizing that the way that I see and experience something is not the whole truth. It's just one perspective. And if we can bring that level of self-awareness when we enter into these conversations, the person on the other end is going to be a lot more receptive. And you'll notice over time, those values that tend to like show up time and again, there's going to be a pattern to it, right? Mm-hmm. We can start to learn a lot about ourselves and the things that show up for us over and over. And there's work to do there too. So just recognizing that, you know, feedback can teach us just as much about ourselves as it can about the other person. And that's like always fun to wrestle with.
It is fun to wrestle with, right? Because I think too, it's that juxtaposition and the healthy tension of, yes, this is a me thing. And instead of saying, but, it's an and.
Mm-hmm. Both and 100%.
Right. And it's where does this fit, if at all, within this puzzle piece?
Mm-hmm. Because again, it's not to say, oh, you know, I got triggered in that situation. That's on me. I should go in a corner and take care of it on my own. Like there probably is feedback that other person needs to have. And if you're on the other side of it, if I did something to rub you the wrong way, I absolutely want you to come and tell me about it. That helps me show up better for you, right? That's a gift that you were letting me know versus, and if you don't tell me, I'm just going to keep probably doing the same thing over and over and nothing gets better. So you absolutely should give the feedback. And it's also about framing it with that level of self-awareness that it's not because you're a terrible person, right? Or anything like that. We don't want to make those kind of blanket statements, but there's a way to own the subjective piece of it, but still be vulnerable and have those conversations in a way that's fair.
Right? Yeah. I love what you're saying about that, Haley, too, because it's yes, we're going to have issues. Like life is messy. This is not heaven. Someday we'll all get there. Right. So it's kind of a framework to have these conversations. And I agree with you. Like a lot of times we'll talk about, okay, we're not going to talk about the person. We're going to talk about the problem that we're trying to solve. We're going to talk about the problem and hopefully more of a project, right? Like making it about the thing and not the person.
I always say, like, how do you put the problem in front of us instead of between us, right? Like that person is not the enemy. The enemy, quote unquote, is this thing, this hurdle that we have to get over. And how can we figure out how to leverage that other person's strengths? How do I figure out how to communicate what's important to me? And also, more importantly, listen first for the most part, right? Like actively listen, perspective take, get as much information as you can instead of just rushing in and trying to push our agenda, which is human instinct. We have ideas, we have thoughts, we want to share them. But just also recognizing there are ways to show up in these conversations that's going to, one, get you a lot more information and make that other person a lot more receptive. And it's a perfect example of those are the types of skills you can learn, right? Yeah. Those are leadership skills you can learn.
Yep.
Our instinct under stress and pressure maybe isn't to go there, but that's why you show up. Like everything that I do, I call them team practices. It's all about reps, right? I played softball, so I'll use like a softball analogy. If you want to teach somebody how to throw a ball, the most effective way to do that is not put 100 people in a room and put a trainer in the front of the classroom and have them share in meticulous detail how to throw a ball. That's important. It's probably a good jumping off point, but you have to go to practice and you have to do reps and you have to like work out the kinks and have a coach watch you and give you feedback and perspective and be able to practice in that safe space. And I think leadership is very similar, where it's absolutely a learnable skill and there's a level of training and I need to give you some information that's really important. And I think it's vital to have those safe spaces where we're going to get reps and it's going to be messy and it's not going to be perfect and you're not going to ruin anybody in this environment. Right. And we can be vulnerable and we can ask questions and I don't need to have all the answers. And that's why I call it practice, right? It's like show up and practice doing all all of these new skills and start to build the muscle memory. That way, when you show up to the game, i.e. you go back to work and you're dealing with that situation in real time, you don't have to think so hard because you know the steps, you know what the next piece of the puzzle is, you know which tool from your toolkit you should be pulling out.
Yeah.
And that's where I think what we're doing is so different and important from a lot of ways that people try to learn and grow as leaders. You know, a lot of people have that thirst and they grab a book or they see a keynote speaker and it's great and there's such good information there, but you need the accountability and you need the reps to actually start to institute the behavioral change. And that's really at the core of what we do in our team practices.
Yeah. I love that too. And I love the fact that you're addressing behavior. And because I think a lot of times, you know, we move into leadership or somebody moves into leadership and they go, all right, I made it and everything's going to be great. Yep. And to your point, we're not necessarily prepared for the fact that, oh man, I have to address certain things, right? Maybe it's a way somebody dresses. Maybe it's a way somebody's smelling that day. Like, we've all been in these situations. And I think the other thing I hear you saying is, being prepared, right? So definitely addressing behavior, definitely being prepared and practicing, because none of us are perfect and we're not born with these skills.
No. So and you would never tell somebody how to throw a ball and then throw them into a game, right? That's just not how we build skills. And I think leadership is very similar, but oftentimes we're like, oh, you excelled in this other role, we're going to throw you into leadership and you'll be great. And it's like, no, there are skills that we need to learn. And if you don't give someone the practice space and the instruction, they're going to learn by trial and error. I mean, if you throw somebody in enough games, eventually they'll learn how to throw a ball. They're probably going to do a lot of damage in the long run, and like make a lot of mistakes. And so again, that kind of gets back to the learning curve of how do you create an environment where we can shrink that learning curve. And instead of creating a bunch of stress and tension that could have been avoided by hoping someone figures it out on their own, you're giving them all of the tools and the coaching to be successful relatively quickly.
Yeah. I just think that's amazing. And I think the other thing I hear you talking about too, if I had to listen between the lines, is really about dignity for people. And I think it's an important piece. I think especially in the world we live in today is, to your point, nobody shows up to work going, I have a plan today to make everybody else's life miserable, or I really just want to suck at what I do today. I don't think anybody does that.
No, no one wants to. You don't want to ostracize the people on your team. You want them to, especially as a manager, it's like, my success is now reliant on your success, which is, again, one of those like 180 shifts where it's like, before, if I came to work and I took care of my stuff, that's all I needed to do. And now all of a sudden my success is reliant on getting the best out of everybody else. So just logic would suggest that your manager is not trying to aggravate you and make you fail. And every time I tell somebody what I do, everyone has a horror story about a manager that they had at one point that really made their life difficult and stressed them out and didn't listen and felt like they weren't being heard and all the other things. It's like a very common story. And again, it's like, I don't think any of those managers are like evil people who like wanted to make their teams like, they didn't have the skills and they didn't know. And so that's what we're remedying, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's so important. It's so impactful. And thank you. I know there's other aspects to your program and kind of your cohorts as well as what you're doing. And so as you talk with colleagues, you know, myself and others, what are some of the other the one topic you're hearing right now in conversations with your colleagues?
What's the one topic? I'm going to have to narrow it down.
Yeah.
I do think the one topic that's come up time and again is around this idea of how do we get everybody on the same page using the same language? Because there is also a recognition that, again, like I said, business is a team sport.
It is.
Right? If one person has all of these skills and nobody around them has any idea what they're doing or how they're speaking or what their intention is, there's a limitation to the ripple effect that's going to have. And when you start to put more and more people in an organization through the same content with the same language, it's amazing as people go through these cohorts, they're like, oh, it's so great that everybody, the way that we give feedback, everyone gives it the same way now. And
Yeah.
so I have more confidence that I can go to someone and they're going to know exactly what my intent is and why I'm scripting things the way that I'm scripting it and what I hope to get out of it. Or when I mention like a growth mindset, like people know exactly what that means. Or when I mention even something small, like I have a time block on my calendar, people know, oh, that I know what a time block is, and I know that that's important and I shouldn't bother them. And so just that, I think that knock-on effect, particularly with my clients, of recognizing, oh, like the magic of everybody in an organization, or all the managers in an organization starting to use the same language and have the same tools to solve these problems, becomes exponentially more valuable, because now not everyone has to come to me when they have a problem. They know that Sally is in the same cohort and we've worked through problems in real time in team practice. And if I have attention on Tuesday and I'm not meeting with my cohort till Friday, I can go tap Sally on the shoulder and we can have a conversation where now we're working together and coaching each other from the same toolkit. And I'm solving these problems so much more efficiently and effectively. And so I think really figuring out, how do I make the team dynamic stronger, and how do I make an organization grow faster? It's like getting everybody on the same page with the same language makes a really big difference.
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. And I'll share this, and I have a question for you. That's one of the exercises we do is who's at your table, right? Because it's easy we're on a screen right now. Normally people are remote, and it's just very easy to hide. You not hide, but you miss out when you're in person, right? And so a lot of times we'll say, hey, let's get together in person. And who's at your table, and we write out kind of personal, professional purpose statements, and we walk through and I know you have it too, the revenue by design annual plan and stuff. And just, it heightens that awareness, and it helps you to see the other person, because to your point, the ultimate goal is to reduce friction, increase velocity, so we all achieve our goals.
100%.
And that's not like the dirty secret. It's not one of the, in the video I talk about being unapologetically successful, where it's like, no, we're here to be successful. This is a for-profit business. You know what I mean? So,
100%.
Yeah. And what shouldn't be missed in there is, hey, when we are optimized and performing at a level that is just in that flow, our clients are happier, our teams are happier, we're seeing greater success and growth at the end of the day.
And engagement goes up. I mean, in my experience, when people realize my company cares about me enough to go through a program like this, and yes, it's absolutely making them better leaders, but leadership is people skills, and they start to see all of these skills transfer to their life outside of work too. They see the friction in their life also start to go down, and they're showing up differently with their spouses and their children and all of these other things. They get that much more engaged, that much more excited. And I always say, like, the development doesn't need to be a solo expedition, right? Like, we do it in cohorts for a reason, because we're not perfect. Like, if the people around us know what we're working on, then they can also catch us, and they can support us, and they can hold us accountable to the goals that we're setting for ourselves. You grow so much more quickly when the people around you are engaged and supporting you in that growth. And so, again, kind of the engagement comes on two levels. Like, you're so much closer with your colleagues who are developing and growing alongside of. Like, the bond that's created in that environment is completely different than working on a project together. But it will help you work on that project together much better, much more efficiently. And that second layer is, my whole life is getting better because I have these skills, and I know how to listen, ask questions, and communicate. And I recognize when I fall into a victim mindset, and I know how to shift out of it, and all of these things that we cover, right? And so it's like, you have both of those things going on. Absolutely, your work product is going to get better, but the people on your team are going to be that much more excited to show up to work. And, the ripple effects continue.
Yeah, it is. It really is about the ripple effects, right? And I don't know about you, for a long time, I've spoken with folks who are like, I'm a totally different person at work than I am at home, or I have to be, or whatever the case may be. And I get that. Like, maybe you're a performer, and maybe, some people think about going to work and like putting on a performance, right? And I get that from like a switching of the mentality perspective. But I think what we're talking about too is like innate skill building at a human level that kind of brings it all together at the end of the day.
Because it's all stress and tension. How do we deal with conflict? How do we deal when we have too much stuff on our plate, when things aren't going to plan? Like, that's when, like, a great leader, you can tell who a great leader is, right? When everything's going perfect,
Easy.
It's easy. It's anyone can manage a team that when things are going flawlessly. And it's like when we leave work, there's a lot of stress and pressure. And a lot of people tell me, I put so much energy into showing up as the best version of myself when I'm at work. And I'm so conscious of it that when I get home, I'm tired and my family gets the brunt of it. Right. And like I have a little bit less patience and I'm not showing up as the version that I want. And so starting to recognize those things and use these skills in that context makes people feel so much better because they're like, this is the person that I do want to show up for my family. Like those are the people that I'm going to work for. And so it's not even necessarily like I'm faking out at work, but it's like we're just so tired by the time we get home that it's so easy to I don't know, let ourselves off the hook a little bit.
Yeah, I love that too. I recently heard this statement that said there's a difference between exhaustion and depletion. And I was like, oh, I love that, right? I'm a word nerd and I love all of that, right? Because it's so true. And I'm the same way. Like I go all in on a project and I come up and I'm like, oh man, I got nothing left. So how do I fill my tank, right? But again, I think we're talking about awareness. We're talking about how do we show up and do the best things ever that we want to do, right? We want to be a good version of ourselves at the end of the day. So the question I have for you, you are joining us as a speaker at our upcoming H2H Human Connection Done Right Summit. Is this kind of some of the content and some of the ideas you're going to share with us during that summit?
Yes, I am like very excited to talk through if you want to develop the people on your team, like we want to give you like all the magic sauce of how to create a space that's really developmentally focused. What are all of the ingredients that I use to create a developmentally focused space and the types of tools that we teach so that you're equipped to understand how to bring that type of learning and development really effectively into an organization. So if you're interested in learning development, if you're interested in growing your team or growing your people, we're going to give you as much as we can in 20 minutes.
It's going to be amazing. And it's also going to be turned into a book, everybody. So registration is coming soon. We're a little behind our schedule to launch the website. We have a few speakers that are coming in a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. We're going to give everybody a little bit of latitude and grace. And Haley's going to be speaking along with about 20 other folks. So we are super excited for this summit. Come and get your learning on, invite your team members. Haley, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy learning from you, having you on the show today, and just interacting with you in general. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Haley Hensel, or code.co on LinkedIn or Instagram are the best ways to find me.
I love it. Spell code for everybody. It's COED.
COHD. It stands for Cultures of Human Development.
And I've seen your email address so many times, right? And I keep
a weird one. I take the
No. COHD.com, everybody. .co.
Yep.
Never mind.
Close.
I'm going back to bed today. So I'm going to give you my excuse that I'm suffering from a head cold, but no excuses.
It's all good.
No. Well, thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. We've got Darren joining us tomorrow and a few other really amazing speakers and episodes coming and alongside us. And Haley, thank you again so much. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk everybody soon.